Cool, everybody. Thanks for joining us at the Outside Voice podcast show. My name is Shane. We do this every Friday night live on Facebook at 8 o'clock Central. We've been doing this for about a year now, and we're so glad you've joined us for another episode of the Outside Voice. We record this and, of course, upload it to iTunes and Google Play and all the other podcast directories, and you can download that for free by going to our website, theoutsidevoiceshow.com. Well, enough for the promos. My guest tonight is somebody that I've kind of followed a little bit, not only because of his podcast, but also because of his music. I got to see him about 2 years ago as they kind of came through the Midwest at a little church in Decatur, Illinois called First Christian Church, and they kind of did a little special show. And I got to watch him. And well, I played in bands for about 20 years, and I always loved writing music and creating. And a lot of times people would ask, who do you sound like? I don't believe I had heard of you yet, Matt, or at least the Classic Crime yet, but years later, after listening to it, it'd be like, oh, that's the band I would want to sound like if I could, just always enjoy. I would list like Smashing Pumpkins and Faith No More, and we never sounded like them, but and then I heard you guys, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the sound. So anyway, if you will, welcome my guest, Matt MacDonald.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt, for joining us. Seattle time, right? Is it 6 o'clock-ish around your...
6:01. Yeah, we're pretty succinct here. We're right on time.
Awesome. Well, cool. Again, Matt MacDonald has been playing in bands called The Classic Crime. If you have not checked them out, go check them out. They have a new CD in the works coming out here real soon. And then I believe 4 other releases available if people want to check you guys out, right?
Classic Crime? Yeah. What is it now? 5, well, 6 if you count. 7 if you count them all.
EP stuff and stuff like that. Yeah. Also, and then he's also in a group with his wife called The Vocal Few. And they do an interesting thing, kind of touring around and doing these home shows, these very intimate setting shows. And even more interesting is that you take your family with you, right? You have some children that go along for the ride. What an adventure.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. That. I mean, we did 3 tours in the old band van and finally had to retire it because it had 315,000 miles on it. But yeah, with just the kids. I mean, we started with just our daughter when she was 8 months, our firstborn, and then we brought our second on the road, and now we have 3. So we've finally upgraded to an RV where they can, we don't have to move inside a hotel room every night to get them down. They can just go to bed in the back. So got bunks in the back. It's got refrigerator, oven, microwave, all the stuff we could need. So now we're fully mobile as a family. It's gonna be crazy, but we're excited.
How do you look at that? Like, is that something you ever did as a kid? Did you guys do family vacations and cross country and the Winnebago kind of thing like that? The Griswold vacation kind of experience?
No, I mean we camped. Well, like we went to the KOA and camped or whatever in tents, or we did cabins, but we never traveled. We never had a house on wheels. So, but I mean, I'm used to it now. I spent my 20s touring and Walmart parking lots and all that. So now it's just like, how can we do that in a way that just isn't soul-crushingly just sad as far as like no AC and whatever we used to do. So yeah, we were trying to make it a little bit more, a little bit more comfortable.
But what was the avenue for you with music? What kind of kid were you? Were you a sport kid who later found weed and music, or what direction? How did you come into playing?
No, I mean I went to high school, and that's usually the formative years of when people find music. Middle school, high school, or whatever. And I went to middle school and high school in a small town. We'd moved across the border from Canada. It was a cow town. So I still listened to like Canadian rock radio. Okay. But I'd heard of some bands that weren't being played on the radio through my friends. I kind of got in just with like, I guess I always, I listened to grunge music in the 90s, and but I'm more of a late 90s guy, so it became, like The Offspring and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I never was really exposed to, I was always mainstream, like whatever was blowing up on the radio, because I never was exposed to like an independent scene. It was just a cow town. And so yeah, I got my first real 6-string when I was like, I got an acoustic when I was like 10, and that's in 5th grade when I learned how to play guitar. And then I think on my 16th birthday, I got like a Squier Strat. It was my first electric guitar, and I got a distortion pedal, and I started playing, punk rock riffs, you know, just bar chords and stuff. And that was probably my real start. I think I started writing songs or ditties probably around 13 or 14, but never really got like fully into a style of music until I was 16.
Were you one of those kids that sat and played every day, or was this just kind of a side thing?
No, I was more interested in writing. I was more of a lyricist, so like the chords were just a vehicle for my thoughts and my rhymes and stuff like that. So I had like just a box full of loose leaf paper and of terrible, terrible lyrics that were totally derivative or whatever, but I thought were unique or expressed my unique personality. So I would play those for like my brother, who was pretty encouraging. And then when I met my my wife, who's my wife now, I was 17, and I would play her those songs, and she would, you know, sit in the corner of my bed and be like, "Wow, that's really good." And they weren't, but
Yeah, yeah. So I'm assuming like poetry and things like that. Was that kind of a thing for you? Is that where the lyrics came from, or was it just were you an expressive young man?
yeah, I'd always gone. I've always felt creative and artistic and misunderstood, which is those are key for if you want to be a brooding, thoughtful songwriter in your teenage years.
Yeah.
But I was more of I was a visual art guy. I would draw a lot. I had sketchbooks. I still have sketchbooks full of drawings, and I thought I'd be a comic book artist. And then something happened where I realized that I could sing and I could come up with words that would rhyme and make sense off the top of my head, like freestyle. And I got a lot more attention for that. And so I think just being a teenager and like wanting attention from cool kids or girls, like that just seemed like a better thing to focus on. Like I can get more attention if I do the music thing.
Yeah, I heard you just say in the podcast, you know, you remember doing what was it, a high school play or something like that, where you had this a Beatles.
Yeah, that was in fifth grade. That was the first
of. Whoa, I can kind of.
Yeah,
sing.
that was the first. That was the first. That was in fifth grade, and that was the first time I was on stage in front of people. You know, outside of like whatever you do, the nativity scene in church or whatever. It was like, you know, and I remember, yeah, I remember that moment, like where I looked around at my friends and they were so nervous. My friends were so cool at like doing cool stuff in front of people, and I just remember their stage fright, and I remember feeling totally okay, like I got this, and like nailing it, and then being like, I could do this. This is
kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, mine came through breakdancing, through the whole Michael Jackson experience.
Nice.
I was also in a small farming community, and I remember the day I decided to moonwalk my lunch tray back to the receptacle to dump everything, and I thought, today's the reveal. Today I will rule this school. So didn't quite play out like I hoped, but oh well.
All that premeditated stuff never does.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So music, you've been touring around for a while. Again, the classic crime. How long you guys have been around? Since early 2000s,
yeah,
correct?
We founded in 2003 under a different name. In 2004, we changed it to the Classic Crime. We've been going ever since.
Did you ever do the bar cover band thing, or did you guys go right for original
We
music?
never covered. It's so weird. These two scenes, they play in the same venues, but they never overlap, and people are so confused sometimes who are from the cover scene that I can't play any cover songs. You're on tour. You travel. You go to bars. You go to these venues, and you play this music, and you don't know any Dylan. And I'm like, no, I don't. I could try.
I had the exact same experience. I had an older brother that showed me a bar chord. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Hands on the guitar, and I kind of thought I know I didn't say it, but I kind of insinuated, cool, that's all I need. And I kind of walked away at that point. That was the last guitar lesson. And I just moved these chords around,
Right.
not thinking keys, scales, or anything, just kind of humming melody lines. Of course, my first melody lines always followed my guitar pattern until I got good at it. But yeah, I can relate to that let's just go kind of thing. Yeah. I could play the intro to Crazy Train and maybe Man in the Box would be the two options. But other than that, not many covers. Anyway.
I can figure it out. I just don't know any other people's music. So I'm not even that much of a listener or a fan of music. I just I do latch on to a record every couple years, and I really go deep into it. But I'm not ever looking for other music to enjoy. I feel like that kind of takes away from enjoying my own, or at least takes the energy. You know, if I have limited amount of energy to work on music, I need to be doing music that I have to do as opposed to be like expending it listening to other people's stuff. So
Sure. Well, that's something that a lot of people don't talk about very often is the idea of when you're an artist who creates music. I've heard both ways. A friend of mine, a guy named Doug Pinnick from the band King's X, had mentioned to me after he writes some stuff, after writes a song, he's kind of done with it. It's kind of like it's gotten out of him and moved on. And you mentioned, kind of in possibly, hopefully I understood this right, that you kind of enjoy listening to your music. Is that
I enjoy creating it and listening as I create it, but once it's done, I really don't. I will give it one listen, and then feel really good, and then I move on because I know what it is. Like there's no surprise there. Okay, I was there every step of the way, so I want to hear it all come together and then be like, it's correct. Now next thing, and then a couple of years later, or sometimes 10 years later at this point, I'll be like, I wonder what that sounds like, knowing what I know now, like knowing what I know about songwriting or knowing what I know about production, tones. I wonder what that sounds like with these ears, and I'll go back and listen. But yeah, people are like, you never listen to your own music, and yeah, I don't. I just don't. It's not. It's awkward feeling, especially when people put it on in front of me, because I think about it very differently than they do. They're like, this is cool, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that.
And you can remember the various takes, and it's kind of interesting to see what
Yeah.
You can remember what you were going through, or what you were thinking, or whatever at that moment. And
yeah.
I talk about that with like movie stars, and one interesting thing: a lot of these movies are shot years in advance, and we, as the audience and the consumers, we don't see this movie for years later. And that artist, that actor in that movie, kind of has to digress and go back and live that life 2 years ago. So tell us what it's like working with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And you're like, I don't friggin' remember. It was 2 years ago.
I don't remember. Yeah. That's true. And especially when a lot of our songs or the songs that I write happen to be autobiographical, they mirror. So it's not even. So I made a record 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And it's going to come out in April 28th. We made it in August, but I had written a lot of those songs, maybe even the year prior to that. So it's all sort of mirroring and paralleling a process that I'm going through in my life, and it was all very fresh and very raw and very visceral, and sometimes very harsh, and sometimes there's anguish and there's pain that isn't there anymore. Right. But people are going to hear it in April and go, whoa, dude, like, you're experiencing some stuff. And I'm like, no, that's something I went through. I'm fine now. But that's kind of how it is, I think, for musicians and songwriters, is that like, and people think it's a fixed position or it's a static position. Like in 2007, I wrote a song that had the lyrics, I sing songs I don't like to strangers every night. And people will always ask me, what songs don't you like? And my answer is, I like all the songs now, but like that was a moment in time where I was singing these songs that had all this bravado and this confidence, and I wasn't feeling confident, so I just didn't like doing that. It was day in, day out, And so that's why I didn't like the songs. But it's not this fixed position or this, a song is a point in time. It's a freeze frame or a photograph. And then after that, I'm always on the journey, man. I'm always changing and growing. So that's what I hope people understand, is that like, no matter what I say in a song, it is autobiographical, but it's just a snapshot. It's just a moment or an emotion. And it's nothing permanent.
Yeah, and it's more attached to a particular thing than actually a big picture. It's not attached to sadness as a whole.
Well, people tend to look at music like, what is it teaching me? Like, what is the foundational truth in this? And it's art. It needs no argument. It's not trying to convince you of something. I'm just expressing an emotion. That's it.
Well, often we want to take a responsibility with art. We think that it's our interpretation that gives it its validation and its purpose. And much like looking at Scripture, and we'll talk about faith here in a little bit, the idea is, what did the writer intend? What did the creator intend? And
right.
You perceive things, and you might be able to say, oh, that feels like my story. And you can kind of maybe proofread it and work it into your deal. But it's really, the piece of art was created by the artist to intend to express something.
Yeah, and I would say probably because we were on Tooth and Nail Records, maybe the fanship that we're used to engaging with is more attuned to that scriptural reading, that kind of literalist, dualistic kind of, there's a correct way and an incorrect way to interpret the song, and they kind of approach the just enjoying music with the same lens that they would approach the Bible if it was, if they were approaching it as an inerrant document that had a fixed meaning.
Sure.
So, and I'm always like, no, don't do that to us. Like, I'm not making any truth claims here. I'm just expressing, and you can take that however you want. But people are like, well, what does it really mean? What did you mean for it to mean? And I try to stay away. I know people are like, that's a cop-out, but I try to stay away from that as much as I can, because I'm often diminishing the meaning of the music for other people. I can ruin my own songs for people if I'm not careful, and I don't want to do that. I think that's the beauty and the mystery and the magic of music, is that it can mean so many things that I never intended. Why would I want to narrow it down and limit it and make it some literal thing when it's this thing that's way bigger than that? So
yeah. Let's talk about that faith a little bit. What's your faith background? Of course, I mentioned that I saw you at a church here. I think you guys were just kind of coming through. It might have been a one-off deal.
Yeah.
But of course, looking at your bio, I can see that you guys, of course, you signed with Tooth and Nail, which has stereotypically been Christian bands, or at least during that.
Right.
But you guys kind of shun that. You mentioned in your bio, everybody's in a different area of faith and their own journey within the group, and that's fine.
Right.
But you yourself, what's the journey? How raised?
Well, I grew up. My parents were hippies that converted, into a non-denominational fundamentalist church in the 70s. So they were, kind of these lost souls, these wanderers, these travelers, and heard the gospel message preached as like there is a literal truth here that you can grab onto and you can know it. And I think that was really appealing to them, being that they were kind of tossed by the winds in those days. And so they really grabbed onto it, and they had a full-on, born-again conversion, as they would say. And so we were raised in a very fundamentalist upbringing. Women can't speak in church, the head coverings and the long dresses, and we all wore suits, and it was all King James Version Bible, and
which is the only good one, right?
It's the only true one, yeah. But I'm well versed in all of them now, so I guess I'm thankful for that. But yeah, and then teenage rebellion. I went to camp. That's where I met my wife, and there was a lot of different traditions that I was exposed to as far as within the wide stream of Christianity, that I felt like were more reasonable,
right,
and less judgmental, and so that was really appealing to me, and kind of went through that. But then we were actually, our band, so some of the guys in the band are Christian, and especially the two founding members. I was not a founding member, and I joined because they wanted a singer who was like going to be, like a decent moral person. And when they knew that I was a Christian, they were like, okay, that's like a huge big thing for us.
Okay.
So, and then I don't know if I behaved exactly up to what their expectations were, but yeah, and then other guys came in and weren't really about that, but they didn't seem to mind, because I at least was writing the lyrics, and I don't know, maybe I wouldn't be offensive, or I don't know, I'm not really sure. We tried to get signed to a major label. We had a bunch of showcases and wanted to be a major label band, and then those didn't go right. And we were from Seattle, and Tooth and Nail's from Seattle, and so Chad Johnson kept coming out to shows. He was our A&R at Under Oath and Amberlin. So we signed with them, and I think our management was like, we don't want to be a Christian band. Like we want a real shot here at the mainstream. And I think at the time, Tooth and Nail was kind of hitting it big with a lot of different music. And so that was kind of they kind of agreed, okay, we're not going to go the traditional route through church and Christian bookstore. Like, we'll hit that, but we'll mostly try to go mainstream radio and try to get them on Warped Tour and stuff like that. So we agreed to that, but we kind of backed ourselves into that scene. We never really were influenced by that scene. We never really felt like we belonged, so to speak. I never, when we played in churches, it was always like, ugh, this weird, yucky feeling that of almost of opulence, like this is too good and for the wrong reasons.
Right, sure.
So we're getting treated really well. We're getting paid a lot of money, but like it's just it feels like it's just a self-congratulating thing for us to be here. We'd rather be on the outside with the outsiders because we felt like outsiders ourselves. So,
You ever find yourself playing the role? I mean, I've done the church thing, especially at charismatic churches where
yeah,
they really want you to play the role, work it up a little bit. Did you ever find
no,
flipping it all?
like if you want to say something from stage about Jesus or whatever, I would just say no. That's just not what we do.
Okay.
I mean, we're not in ministry. We're in music. And I know that sometimes those lines blur, and especially in the scene, the lines blur. It's like if you are in music, then you are in this official role of someone who speaks to other people and tells them what to believe, or shares their. They would say maybe share their story of how Jesus has been good to them or whatever. And I never felt comfortable doing that, so I just never did. And to our detriment sometimes. I mean, I think we could have gotten a lot more festival dates and a lot more, big church shows if we had wanted to play it up more.
Yeah.
But I was just never willing to compromise on what I felt like my convictions were.
That's awesome. So were you finding yourself stuck, though? I mean, still kind of playing these venues. Did you find a way out of that? Of course, you guys...
Well, we never really played. I mean, honestly, like you say you saw us at a church. We might have played at 6 or 7 churches over 10 years. Like,
okay. So it wasn't a thing that you had pigeonholed into, kind of. Okay.
No, I mean, if we're coming through and someone offers us money and it's like on the way, then we would be like, yeah. But it wasn't like our first thing to do. So, and we just don't anymore, and we just don't want to. Yeah. Because we've actually offended some people. Like, they'll see Robbie smoking, or they'll see our merch guy cracking a beer in the van or whatever, and they'll be like really upset. And we don't want to upset people, but we just don't give off. We've never given people I don't think we've given people the illusion that we're something that we're not. I think we're pretty honest about who we are, who we employ, and so it just doesn't work if people are expecting us to be one way and then we're just not. And I'm sitting there going, what? I didn't read some code of conduct rules, or our guys are just going to be our guys, and that's just don't book us.
Sure.
So,
now, is that how you've always kind of perceived the gospel? Obviously, you're working with Bad Christian, and what you guys are doing on Don't Feed the Trolls, you don't always talk about faith, but kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, challenging people in that area. Did you look at these folks who may have been judging your band and your team that was along with you for smoking or drinking, and going, oh gosh, these Neanderthals, they aren't getting really what the gospel is all about? Did you struggle with that at all?
I know. I don't like. I mean, probably when I was younger, I thought I knew better. Mm-hmm. But like, I think those people are on their own journey, and their journey is valid, and I wouldn't try to throw them under the bus and say they're being stupid or harmful. But I'm very clear that that group is not. I am not called to that group.
Yeah.
Someone else is, and other people do a really good job of it, of riding that line and bringing people along. But I don't have the spiritual gifts for it. I'm a challenger. I call people out. I'm brash. I want the honest truth. So if I see someone projecting an ideal self, I'll rage against it. And those people are not usually willing to hear that. And so I go where people are into that. So that's just my personal conviction too.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you feel like that is a personal conviction, or is that something, I don't know, I've kind of wondered. I know we're not Jesus, but if they say as Christians we're supposed to go be like Christ into the world, I'm going, so is there somebody who's supposed to be, handling the money changers, the religious people? And I wonder, do you ever feel any responsibility? And you kind of answered that. any roles in that, or even with the podcast? I mean, are you? What was the purpose? What was the motivation? Because you're challenging all kinds of things. You're looking at politics and you're looking at
Sure.
everything on that. So, what is that?
I just think that's my personality, and I think that that's what I'm here to do. I embrace who I am. And that isn't to say that, like, I'm a jerk, and so therefore I can be a jerk and I can challenge everybody and I don't have to be sensitive. That's not true, but I have a predisposition to be a certain way that can be helpful and can be, and the challenge can help people grow. And I was being that way for a long time on Facebook. And I mean, I know I can't see and I can't measure and I can't, figure out what's happening, but sometimes it can feel pretty fruitless. I don't know if you've noticed on Facebook. I feel like maybe I shouldn't even engage. Maybe this isn't going the way that I want it to. Maybe people aren't challenging their preconceptions. Maybe I'm not even challenging my preconceptions. Maybe this is all just, we're all just going through the motions, trying to take a stance because we want to feel like we're valuable or heard. So that's kind of why I started the podcast, because I was like, at least I can put my voice to this, and I can have a conversation with someone who actually I disagree with a lot. Nate and I disagree on a lot of things. So, and we're friends, and that's what I like. I like disagreeing with people and remaining friends. I don't think we have to cut people out of our life for disagreements. So, so I was like, this makes perfect sense. Nate and I can disagree in a friendly way, and we can kind of show that it can be done, and we can talk about these hot button issues and not, get so offended that we unfriend each other.
Yeah. And so you've been doing the podcast for about a year. It's called Don't
Yeah.
Feed the Trolls. Sometimes you guys are introspective, it's seeming, when I listen to the podcast. And I'm assuming and you've mentioned this a few times, when you're talking about trolls, some of the trolls are the trolls that are messing with you. Your inner trolls and outer trolls and things like that. So this is a way for you to address those things yourself too, correct? Much like songwriting.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm a doer, right? I'm instinctually always doing. So this is a way for me to, like, if I say I have a problem with getting over the fact that, or starting a project, or, overcoming my imposter syndrome, or whatever creative blocks are in my life right now, like I'm not good enough. If I have that problem, I'm going to do something about it. And to me, like, the doing was the podcast. The doing was, if I put this out here and we talk about how we're going to overcome ourselves, then we will have a bit of, I hate to use the word accountability, but at least some pressure on us to take our own advice. And that's kind of what it's become for us. It's like we're going through, we're trying to create, we're trying to do these projects, and every week we come up against resistance. And so we talk about those struggles and how to overcome them, and that helps us in our real life overcome them.
Well, obviously, with each episode, each one's different. But you yourself, at whatever age you are, that you're addressing life, you're doing many things. From an exterior perspective, it looks like things are going okay, and they may be that case. But I mean, what are you wrestling with? Being a dad?
I mean, I have 3 kids. I'm not financially stable. I don't make regular money. I don't have any money saved. I've kind of lived my life in a way that, like, every day is the last, and that's my personality too. But sometimes if I'm not careful, or if I'm not focused on the why that I do that, then I lose track, and I can easily start comparing my life to other people my age. I'm 33. Other people who have houses and cars and rental homes and go on big vacations. And I get it. The grass is always greener on the other side. And I've chosen my life. I just have to make sure that I connect to the why. Why do I choose this? There's good reasons why I choose this. And so, yeah, I try to connect to those things. And if I don't, I can get distracted just like everybody else. And I go, and then I'm like, why did I choose this? I don't know. Like I can't remember why I'm 33 and I'm broke and I have, a family of 5 I need to support.
Well, has any of that changed? I mean, been doing music for a while. You mentioned the doer on the podcast recently, talking about getting in the loop, the cycle. You seem to be a person that's breaking those cycles, relative self-awareness. But are you still dealing with, like, regret? regret? Because I'm in the same boat. I'm asking because I want to learn from this. I want to see other people's perspective. I've done all kinds of things from playing in a rock band to being a pastor at a church to now doing podcasting. Still trying to go. I got to break the mold because it's still I'm not satisfied. But I'm going. Will I ever get there without having the success in the career and the degree?
Sure.
Is this going to be a constant hustle? And if so, am I going to be okay with that? I got to talk to Billy Power, and I think you know Billy. And he kind of said that. He was saying, it's at his age, and he and I are about the same age. He goes, I could keep doing this or I could go back to school, but I don't know if I want to keep doing the hustle. Do you still love the hustle?
The hustle is hard. I love it because I'm very independent, and I don't want other people to tell me what to do. So the one aspect that I like about this is that I get to tell myself what I'm going to do for the day and what my projects are going to be. And if I want to book a 2-month tour with my family in the summer and travel around the world and buy an RV, or the country, not the world yet, buy an RV and go do it, I can do it. And yeah, there is a financial burden to doing stuff like that. There's not this security and consistency of a regular paycheck, but I also don't have any bosses. So, I mean, it's a trade-off, and at some point, maybe the scales will tip, and I'll be like, you know what, I'll take some bosses for the security. I don't think I'll ever do that, unless they're the right bosses. but yeah, I mean, it's a struggle, and I don't know that I'll always be here. There was a period where I did 80 some odd hours of a 90-hour real estate course. I was talking to real estate brokers. I was going to be a real estate agent because I was, my wife was pregnant with our first, and I thought, that's it. I've never made money doing music. Yeah. I got to do the responsible thing. I'll swing a hammer, whatever it takes. Like, I'll do it. Yeah. And I'm not sitting here going, I'm entitled to some special, exceptional life. I'll do whatever it takes. But in that moment, there was kind of an answer where, we did a Kickstarter and it was fully funded, and I ended up producing it, and then we went on tour, and then I started licensing songs, and then suddenly I was making a living doing music. So I was like, well, I guess I'll put off the real estate thing. I can always do that after this kind of run's over. Yeah. And that was 6 years ago, and the run's not over. So it might be over at some point. I keep doing things that aren't super successful. Besides classic crime Kickstarters, which are a really nice relief, because it's like, oh yeah, great, people still care. I can still do that project at least. But our podcast doesn't make a ton of money, and we do it every week, and it takes a lot of hours. Sure. So,
do you have the mindset is the investing in the podcast? I mean, because obviously it grows an audience. As I've been doing it, I've got nowhere near the audience and reach that you guys have, and you guys, I'm sure, are looking at something like A Bad Christian, going, "Oh my gosh, I wish," kind of deal. Are you looking at? Because I'm looking at it this way, going, I could quit now. Maybe no one does care. Maybe I'm not, on the charts. But if I quit now, then I'll never know if I am going to get there, or if something else will happen. Do you keep going for that motivation, the what ifs a little bit?
I was talking to my wife the other day about it. We kind of, and that is the why. That is one of the reasons why I do what I do, is because I want to live my life with no regrets.
Yeah.
And I think the saddest thing to see is someone who's just overwhelmed with regret over very specific choices they made. And I want to make the choices. If being free is imperative to my personality, then I want to make the choices that I won't regret in that regard. And so I need to keep working. I need to keep doing it. And so like Chrissy the other day, she wanted to submit a vocal cue song for NPR Tiny Desk contest. Okay. And I was like, well, we'd have to film it, we'd have to practice it, we'd have to do it live, it'd have to be a good video. And she wants to get all these people together, and I'm like, that's a lot of coordination. Tell you what, if you get the people, I'll get the video guy, you book the date, we'll do it. And so we did it, and we put it up there. It's like the whole thing is like, we're not going to win. We're not trying to win. Right. But in 20 years, when we see an NPR Tiny Desk submission, we're not going to have that twinge of regret, that pang in our souls that'll be like, oh man, we should have submitted when we were young and cool or whatever. We can always say, yeah, we did that once.
Yeah.
And then it's just done. And then whatever it is, but that's kind of the way that we try to live our lives. It's what we aspire to. And people look at us and they're like, you guys do that so well. And no, it's a struggle. It's hard to do that. You have to constantly remind yourself. And that's part of the reason I have a podcast, so I can say all the things that I believe and then remind myself of them so I can feel better about what I'm doing.
Yeah, how many times have you found yourself going, that's it, I'm done? Have you ever thought about really saying that?
I thought about it, when we were off the label, and I was like, I think our band's over. I was getting into real estate, and I kind of just a hunch, just like, we'll do this Kickstarter, we'll do one last record. And in 24 hours, it was fully funded, and in 30 days, it was almost close to 300% of what we asked for. So
now, this is the newest one that's not yet out, right?
No, this is our first one in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I know you've done a couple Kickstarters. I didn't know, but this newest one's even funded too through Kickstarter, right? That's a thing
this
for you guys.
new one was even bigger than the ones before that. So that's encouraging because it's like, okay, the music that we're putting out is not. I don't know. You start getting older, you're like, oh, do people even listen to this? And we try. I try to grow musically with every record, but every time it's a toss up. It's like, are people into crowdfunding? I don't know. That could have changed in 2 years. That stuff happens. Trends change. Or are people still into our music? Maybe they grew out of it. And I think it's like we've turned a corner at this point where I think people are into us for life. Like, they didn't just grow out of their teenage years or their 20s and start going, I only listen to Sigur Rós. I mean, maybe they do listen to Sigur. I listen to Sigur Rós. I listen to Yon C, man.
Right.
I like it. But they also listen to us still, so that's cool. Like, that's encouraging. It's like, okay, we can keep doing this as long as we can get everyone to pre-order the record before they even hear it.
Right.
And we can make it and do a really good job at it, hopefully. And maybe if they like it, they'll come back another time, and we can just keep going.
That's one of the things I thought was interesting in the last, I don't know how many years. I'm bad with time at my age, Alzheimer's or whatever they call it. But, I kind of grew up in the 80s, the Bon Jovis, the Poisons, the Cinderellas, and all that kind of thing happened. Of course, I was around when the Seattle thing happened and kind of sent all those bands packing and back to warehouse jobs. And it seemed like those bands were done. We're going to hear about them anymore. And I really was kind of surprised to see in my lifetime that there was kind of a regeneration of those, not full-blown, not like there were fans lining up to see them, but there was kind of a nostalgia quality with the Guns N' Roses coming back around. I believe the Poison still does a thing. And then they all started appearing on TV shows, The Apprentice and all this other stuff. And I thought, I would have never thought, and I wonder if they would have thought, like, okay, maybe our career's done now while Kurt Cobain's doing his thing, but if we'll just hang out a little bit longer, we'll come back around in style. And I don't mean to tie this to what you just said about your diehard fans, but it seems like if you can get some of those, maybe there is some sustainability long term. It just won't look the same as it did when you're playing the arenas when you very first came out. Is that
sure?
Is that true?
What I always tell people is that nostalgia is very expensive and it's very valuable. And what you were listening to when you were 16 through 21, in those formative years, that music you'll never, even if it's way out of style, you'll never get over it, because you created some of your most coming of age memories to those songs, those summers with your friends, or whatever. Like, there's significant memories that are made to that music, and when you hear it, it brings you back there, and that is powerful. And so, if you stick around long enough to where those people are 35 and those memories seem super distant, and you can come bring them that song that throws them back, or 45 or 55, it doesn't matter. It gets more and more powerful with age, right?
Sure.
Because you're so much farther away from that 16-year-old kid.
Wow.
And you so much more long for it. So you're willing to spend the $75 ticket, and you're willing to spend a couple $100 on those T-shirts, to represent or to connect with that inner child that's long gone. So I think, they would have never guessed it probably, but I mean, who'd have guessed that Paul McCartney's still on late night television?
True. Do you have anybody of course you said, you are a music fan, but not a huge, got to have the latest thing consumer. Who are you listening to? Who are you enjoying? Do you kind of live in the nostalgia area, or is there new stuff that you enjoy?
My wife listens to a lot of stuff. Like, the last records were like a few years back that I really, really loved were Arcade Fire, The Suburbs, two records ago. I did like Reflector too. And The National, High Violet. Recently, I think it was maybe last year, it came out that Tame Impala Currents I thought was unbelievable. And just, yeah, I don't listen to. It's funny because I don't listen to rock music.
Yeah.
I mean, I did hear the new Thrice record, and I was a fan of that band. And I'll always get like Jimmy Eat World records because like those mean something to me. It meant something to me in my early 20s and late teens. But like I don't. It doesn't like get my soul anymore.
Yeah.
And
Has
also,
there been kind of an overconsumption? You've just seen it, been there, done that. How many times you can
write
see
it.
for?
I write it, and I know how it works. It's like once you know how the
Pull the rabbit out of the hat.
Sausage is made.
Yeah. Okay.
then maybe you're not so that sausage doesn't seem so tasty anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's kind of what it is. Because I've been doing rock music for so long, and that's part of the reason why I did Vocal Few, because I was like, I just want to do I want to try just acoustic music, just folk pop, because that's not take everything to the screamy, yelly place. Let's see if we can make something clever that's a little more subtle. But yeah, I mean so that I don't really listen to rock music that much, but I still appreciate when I hear it and I hear it done well. I go, ooh, yeah, they nailed it.
Yeah. What does it for you? Are you, of course, you are being a lyric person. Is it the music? Is it the melody? Is it the feel? Is it the emotions? What do you look for in a good song? It's
always been lyrics, performance, and then the music. Yeah. Performance of the lyrics. So like it doesn't matter if they're pitchy, really emotive singers I like, where it feels like and I like really sad stuff. So if it feels like they're breaking down, like having an emotional meltdown on the microphone and they're singing out of pitch, I'm into that.
Are you able to bring yourself to that point?
No.
That vulnerable?
I mean, not so much anymore. Like I said, like I'm an aggressive person, so that's why anger comes very naturally to me. Like I can always get myself to an angry place.
Okay.
And just where I'm yelling, and that's where but I don't like that I always go there. And plus, I'm not as angry as I used to be. So like the desperate kind of anger, I don't know. I like singers that can do it all, and so that's what I try.
Well, that's what you've got. I mean, and I'm sure you've heard that before. You got a pretty wide variety with your range. You definitely bring a power, and you got I won't say a scream because people are known that screamo thing. It's not one of those Cookie Monster voices by any means. You're always singing great melodies and stuff like that. But you're definitely when you're hitting that top of your range and you're just belting it out. There's a lot of power and authority in that, so it's nice.
It breaks. It's just pushing it to the limit. And people are like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like you just yell, and then that's what happens. So I'm not very helpful, and I'm not really trained either. But yeah, I mean, the older I get, the more I start thinking about like I want to do some different things with my voice. I want to figure out how to not just be the aggressive guy.
Well, without the schooling and we talked about covers earlier on. A lot of people will cut their teeth and get their chops on playing covers, and you didn't. You kind of went for it, and you said you're not a schooled guy. I kind of did the same thing, and some of it was a resistance and going. I felt like if I knew too many of the rules, I almost looked at them as walls being built around what I could do, limitations, shall we say, of what I could do. Did you ever look at it that way as far as creativity goes? You almost like it was almost better to be ignorant because then it felt like art.
I wouldn't say I was ignorant of it because I could pick apart a song. I could pick apart every rhythm. I could count it. I was in concert band. I knew theory.
Okay, so there was some experience.
I played trumpet, so I was counting 90% of every song to get that bar 123 where I played 3 notes.
That's great.
So I know how to count, and I understand how to figure out a song and break it apart. I would say it depends on your personality, but part of me wishes I would have studied more and copied more just for dexterity's sake, because I can write things in my head that my hands can't do.
Okay, I see that.
But also I don't need to play it. Like there's plenty of incredible musicians, and they're a dime a dozen. So if I needed someone to play something for me, they could come over and do it in 5 minutes, and it's still on my record. So
That's great. Yeah.
And that's kind of how it is these days, anyways. But yeah, I've always seen myself as more of a singer and a songwriter, and with something to say, something to communicate, some emotion. And that's been my role. So yeah, I am a little bit like I wish I would be better at the things that I'm not, but also I don't really care about them as much. Mm-hmm. So what can you do with that? I don't have much regret with the way that I've done it.
That's great. There's a perception that I have, and I'm just curious if this is true. So, using the Seattle scene with the sound gardens and all that stuff that happened, and then using what you guys are experiencing now, and I don't know the other bands that might be in that area, but Tooth and Nail is in that area. You guys are working with them. You're friends with Emery and doing the whole Bad Christian. And I mean, is there just a community there, or is it just kind of a group of you guys who've all been pals for a little while? Is there actually kind of a DIY, let's all band together and, thing? Or how are you guys developing that? Because that's something that I always kind of fantasized about, a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes people think of us as one thing, and then they get into it, and it's not. It's not the fantasy. We were more involved, like in a physical level, in the local scene when we started, and now like everything's online, right? So, I mean, with the artists that we work with, I mean, we have Skype meetings occasionally and marketing meetings and stuff like that. And when they come through, we'll cross paths. Or we had a Bad Christian Christmas party. We had some people fly out for, and we kind of did like a private show, and it was fun. So there is a bit of community in that regard with the artists that we work with, and that's cool. But there isn't some scene that we're a part of. Like I still feel like we're very separate from like whatever everyone else is doing in the actual venues in town. So I mean, we do book the venues and we fill them up, but it's not like we're chumming around with people who frequent those places.
I see. Well, I know we're probably running out of time, but I do want to cover a few things. I jokingly said to you that I want to talk to you about some of your Facebook posts because you and I find a similarity and a kinship with you, except for yours seem to be more intelligent, and I don't know if you get the same fire resistance that I seem to get.
I get it. Yeah, I would say I get it, but maybe I've shot back enough times to where they just either have blocked me or don't want to engage anymore, which I'm cool with too. But I mean, Facebook is so two-dimensional. It's like because people are watching, you have to give your argument the full go-around. You can't just let it be. You can't be contemplative and meditative and let it just roll off your back. You have to kind of get in there. It's all theoretical arguing, and it's all like point by point, and some people don't want anything to do with the points or the facts or the stats, and those people I have no problem ignoring. But people who want to spar, sometimes it goes for days, weeks, and it's invigorating for me. Like I said, excuse me, my personality is like I actually feel joy. And I sleep very well, and people are like, I don't know how you do it, because with their personalities, they're like, they would be riddled with anxiety and not be able to sleep. But I enjoy it, and maybe that's why I get into it as much as I do. Although I do see it as a very limited venue for actual growth and in the idea realms. I think you need it's one aspect. It might introduce you to something, but it's not. No one's going to change their mind.
Like one of your posts today, I believe, said something about a Christendom were a human, I would like to slap it in the face. Something like that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, what fired that up?
Yeah, this idea that the kingdom of heaven is supposed to look like the kingdom of earth, in that it's a top-down power structure, and we need to have authority and take over nations, and it's our nation, our righteous nation versus other nations, and the name Christendom is an oxymoron.
Sure.
Jesus' kingdom was not of this earth. Christ was a power under guy. He didn't take over. They wanted him to be like Caesar, but he wasn't. It was the opposite. He led by washing his disciples' feet. We've gotten so far from that, and we got these people around who are saying Trump's, a Christ follower, and it just enrages me because he's not. He just isn't. Factually is not.
Right.
And there's no way that you can. Now, he might have said some words. He might have he might have confessed, but the way that he leads, the power and the America first and us first and make us great and great in an economy wise and great in a military wise and great in a power and authority and dominion wise, that's not Christian. It just isn't. So I have a problem with people who say that it is, and yes, I do want to slap them in the ear.
Are you surprised by, and of course I know it's his first weeks or whatever, I don't know if he's been really effective. I don't know if that's the term I want to use, but almost how effective he's been in just signing all these things and getting, it's kind of mind-blowing.
I wish other presidents were as effective as him. I mean, he's getting a lot done, and I don't hate the guy or anything. I hate the mingling of Jesus into it. That's the thing that really gets me, really bristles me. So I think I don't like a lot of his policies. I like some of his ideas, the whole like anti-lobbying and getting, drain the swamp. I was like, sure, yeah, that sounds good. I don't know how that's going, really. I try to like stay as far away as I can from getting into the micro details. All my Trump supporter buddies are like, give him 6 months. So I'm trying to do that. I'm trying not to rush to judgment, but I mean, yeah, it's hard. It's hard not to. But yeah, because he's doing so much. He really is. He's doing a lot, and the news is freaking out, and all this fear is being spread, and it's just a difficult time, I think, for a lot of people. But I mean, on the flip side, if I'm going to look through it through the lens of the last 8 years previous, it was potentially a difficult time for a lot of other people. So that's the way it is when you live in a dualistic society, and the pendulum swings from far left to far right, like it seems to. Half the people are going to be hating the president all the time. So It is what it is.
I always kind of wondered if it was, a little like a Star Wars plot. Like, it's always so confusing to find out who the bad guy is for a minute if you don't really know the story. And I'm going,
yeah.
And again, I don't want to really tie these two together, but there would be some people. I'm surprised, actually, a lot of Christians are not talking more like end times things because of all that's going on and so much change and how the world is. I've never been one to buy into that, but a little bit of me's kind of been thinking like, wow, is this really a possibility now? Is this the guy? Is this the guy that's going to bring it down?
Yeah, it's funny. All the atheists are now being like, maybe that end times thing is legit. The Christians are like, no, he's going to make us great again. Jesus delayed the end times. The end times were coming with Obama, but he delayed them. He's going to come back after Trump's 8 years.
That's pretty great. That's pretty great.
But that's it all. It's all the projection. I mean, that's the thing that, like, I feel like self-awareness will fix all of this. I'm aware that I'm angry, all right? And I don't like that about myself. I'm aware that I'm aware of a lot of my flaws. I'm aware of why I support certain things. And I feel like self-awareness is, like, almost devoid, or it's just non-existent in our parents' generation. Like, they don't know why. They just do it. They just do it because that's what you do, and it's part of their identity, and it's locked in. It's like, but why? But why do we have to be a military empire? Like, why do we have to invade all these countries? Like, is it, and they have a religious bent to it? Like, it's like, oh, because God? And I'm like, no. Politics, yes. Empire, yes. Makes sense. We have a peaceful nation. We're the most powerful because we're in control. That makes sense, but like, it's just like they haven't examined the why of what they believe. And I don't know if that'll change. I think it's so tied to their identities. And I think honestly, like, it's going to take them all dying off for that to go away. Wow. I really think that, like, each generation has their deadly sin. And I feel like the deadly sin of our parents' generation is a complete lack of self-awareness of where their insecurities are. Why do you desperately want to be number one? Why do you desperately need security? Why are you so afraid of people of other religions? Why are you so afraid of immigrants or Mexicans or black people or, why? And they'll cite news stories maybe. but they're just not self-aware enough to know that there's like innate biases that are driving that, and that you should work on those. It's just not within them, not internal at all. In their mind, it's all the threat. It's all out there. That's why I have a legitimate threat, says Bill O'Reilly or whoever I listen to. So, or Tommy Lauren or some terrible person. So, anyways,
what's funny is even as you were saying, the why, I'm getting the picture of my parents. When I would ask why, and they would say, because I said so. Never really came back with an answer. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what you're saying about that generation. It's just the way it is, right? We can't change things. We can't, Matt, you can't go live out your dreams. You have to be getting your 401k down.
Yeah. No, I raged against that as a teenager, and I think this is what I do now is just an extension of that.
Sure.
It's just I'm continually against what people tell me is the conventional thing, the wise thing, the thing I need to do. And, part of being wise is to be able to accept all information and decide for myself. So I understand there is some wisdom in there, but like on these specific issues of like just ecumenical studies or how do you come to belief? It's so much of our parents' generation, they come to it through agreements they made with they're all cultural agreements. They're all identity agreements. They're all social agreements with the church they went to, or the school they were raised in, or the family they were brought up in. And they never questioned it. Because if you question it, you're on the outside. And there's all this fear about being on the outside and being ostracized. And our generation and younger are questioning everything. And so the I told you so just doesn't cut it anymore. Sure. I mean, we need to know why. Sure. And we're going to find out why. And the I told you so generation will either join in on that journey with us, or they'll just die out and be remembered as a big mistake.
Wow.
So I think that like I have my parents and I have other parents who are not part of that. They're on their own journeys and they're learning and discovering like well into their 60s and 70s. But there are people I fight with on Facebook who are in their 50s and 60s who are not interested in changing their views that they concretized in their teens or their 20s.
Absolutely.
It's just been concretized for decades.
I've heard much of that about their fashion statements. You can tell where someone stopped. They had their best year, and you can tell by what they're wearing. You're like, when polyester was your best year, right?
Right.
Well, Matt, I do appreciate you taking time to talk with me here today. I'm a huge fan. Love the band. Tell us a little bit of. We'll go out with this. Give me some what's coming up for Matt MacDonald, Vocal Few, and the Classic Crime, and then we'll head out with that.
Sure, yeah. Classic Crime comes out with a record April 28th this year. And then we're going on tour in May. We'll be hitting up the East Coast for 2 weeks with Matt and Toby from Emory and a pretty cool band called Civilian. We're on Tooth and Nail Records. And then Vocal Few will be touring living rooms. Which I feel is like one of the most patriotic things that I go through is like going into people's living rooms who believe very different from me and then just experiencing hospitality. And that like brings me back down. Like it brings me out of my judgmental chair of like anger. And I just go, people are people. And I'm sorry for hijacking your show and making it super political, but I love it. I was raging earlier today. I had to go for a run because I was like, I can't process my rage right now. I'm just so angry at this National Prayer Breakfast speech I heard. So, anyways, done with that. I apologize all your listeners that I offended. No, I apologize. I'm really more understanding than that normally. But yeah, so yeah, and then the tour, and then Christy and I will be getting out of this country for an entire year, which is not related to Trump, but it's kind of nice that it's lining up that way. We'll be moving to Canada for a year to kind of do this living in my grandma's house sabbatical type thing on the East Coast of Canada. So. And then we'll write a record there and then tour back. And that's kind of the plan.
Well, Matt, I know it's not all glitz and glamour. It seems like a little bit of an enjoyable adventure, though. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to be doing along the way. Always listen to the podcast. If you get a moment, folks, check them out. The Don't Feed the Trolls podcast, available on iTunes, Google Play, and all the other outlets. And then check out the Classic Crime and Vocal Few, and you can get their music also on those outlets. And we'll look forward to seeing your podcast up next week, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, have a good evening, Matt. Thanks again. Pleasure talking to you. And look forward to the things that are coming up here soon for you. Thanks so
I
much.
appreciate it, man.
Appreciate
Thank
you. God bless. Bye.